Welcome back to where we delve into the fascinating world of philosophy and history. Today we're unearthing a curious historical paradox. Socrates, one of the greatest minds of ancient Greece, had a major bone to pick with democracy. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't Socrates live in Athens, the birthplace of democracy? You're absolutely correct. In fact, it was around the 5th century BCE that Athens came to be defined by its democratic system, a system where every citizen had a direct say in government affairs, and decisions were made through open discussions and majority votes. It seems like a perfect fit for a man like Socrates, a man known for his love of open dialogue and debate. But here's the twist: Socrates wasn't a fan. Why would a man known for encouraging open dialogue have issues with a system built on the very same principle? Well, not exactly. One of Socrates' main concerns was that in a democracy, decisions were often made by the majority, not necessarily by those who were well-informed or had expertise on the matter at hand. This perspective was rooted in his belief that the average Athenian was politically ignorant, and that this ignorance could lead to poor decision-making. Drawing a vivid picture, Socrates would ask his listeners to imagine being on a ship. If you had to choose a captain, would you want the passengers, who may not know the first thing about sailing, to vote on who should take the helm, or would you prefer an experienced sailor in charge? In the same vein, Socrates argued, a city, like a ship, should be guided by those who have the knowledge and expertise. In other words, the ones who understand the ins and outs of governance. Socrates was also deeply concerned about the manipulative nature of democracy. This was a man who believed in the pursuit of truth and wisdom above all else, and he saw the potential for manipulation in a democratic system as a threat to these ideals. He observed how easily politicians could use persuasive language and emotional appeals to sway the public. For Socrates, this was a dangerous game. He feared that these tactics would lead to decisions being made based on passion, not reason. He worried that the truth could be buried beneath a mountain of empty promises and catchy slogans. But it wasn't just the manipulation that troubled him. At the heart of his concerns was a deep distrust of rhetoric, the art of persuasive speech. For Socrates, rhetoric wasn't just about convincing someone to see your point of view. It was about seeking the truth, questioning assumptions, and striving for wisdom. In his eyes, the politicians and orators of his time were missing the mark. They were using rhetoric not as a tool for exploration, but as a weapon for persuasion. They were more interested in winning the approval of the masses than in upholding the principles of justice and morality. Socrates saw this as a betrayal of what rhetoric should be. He believed that the purpose of speech should not be to deceive or manipulate, but to illuminate and inform. He believed that politicians and orators were more interested in convincing the majority than in upholding the values of justice and morality. Socrates feared what he called the tyranny of the majority. This was his belief that in a democracy, the majority's desires could potentially overshadow those of the minority. He worried that if the majority of citizens decided that a certain course of action was in their best interest, it could lead to the oppression of minority groups or individuals. Socrates saw democracy as a system where the loudest voices, not necessarily the wisest, often prevailed. He argued that a majority rule could easily become a vehicle for bias, prejudice, and self-interest, leading to decisions that might be detrimental to the society as a whole. In his eyes, a just society should be one that protects the rights and interests of all its citizens, not just the majority. Socrates believed that the democratic system, for all its merits, had the potential to be unjust and oppressive in its own way. In conclusion, Socrates' dislike of democracy stemmed from his concerns about ignorance, manipulation, and the potential for tyranny of the majority. We've journeyed back to ancient Athens, dissecting Socrates' discontent with the democratic system. We discovered that his first issue was with the ignorance he perceived in the majority of citizens. Decisions, he argued, should be made by those with knowledge and expertise, not merely by those with the ability to vote. We then navigated the seas of Socrates' famous ship analogy, which highlighted his belief that just like a ship, a city should be guided by the knowledgeable, not the uninformed. His second concern revolved around the manipulative nature of democracy, where persuasive speeches and promises often take precedence over sound, rational arguments. This led us to his distrust of rhetoric, a tool he saw as more likely to deceive than to seek truth. Finally, we delved into Socrates' fear of the tyranny of the majority. This concept encapsulates his worry that in a democracy, the majority's interests could lead to the oppression of minority groups or individuals, resulting in a system that could be unjust and oppressive in its own right. So, while Socrates may not have been a fan of democracy, his criticisms remind us to value informed decision-making and ethical leadership in any system of governance.